Sunrise on the edge of Kruger National Park is usually a symphony of silence, punctuated by the distant calls of the wild. Jack, a former park ranger who had chosen a life of seclusion to heal old wounds, was familiar with every sound of the land. But this morning, he was woken by an unfamiliar bark from Max, his loyal German shepherd. It wasn't the powerful territorial warning Max reserved for passing lions. It was a short, urgent, pleading sound, laced with anxiety, that pierced straight through Jack's heart. His pulse racing, Jack sprang out of bed and rushed to the door, operating on pure instinct. The sight that met him at the small wooden gate brought Jack to a stunned halt. Standing in the soft, golden light of dawn was Max, and beside him, an astonishingly vulnerable creature, a baby elephant. It barely reached Jack's knee, dew-kissed, covered in the fine red dust of the South African savanna, and trembling on stick-like, spindly legs. Its oversized ears drooped with exhaustion, and its deep, sunken brown eyes looked straight into Jack's with a desperate, silent question. This tiny calf, perhaps no more than 3 months old, was completely alone. Tracing the faint tracks in the sand, Jack knew Max had done more than just find it. Max had brought it home. In that moment, Jack, still mending from the losses of his past, made a life-altering decision. He would not let it die. He looked at Max, then at the calf, and whispered the name that would link their fates. Keto. The first 48 hours were a chaotic blur of emergency care and deep emotional observation. Keto was severely dehydrated. Jack, drawing on his old ranger knowledge, knew he needed professional help immediately. He called the nearest wildlife sanctuary, but was told their rescue vehicle was grounded and couldn't arrive soon. Everything now depended entirely on Jack and his ability to improvise. He rushed inside for water, mixing a basic electrolyte formula from what he had, diluted cow's milk, and a hint of honey. But Keto's greatest challenge was not physical. It was winning the trust of a terrified, orphaned wild animal. This is where Max stepped in, becoming an accidental emotional anchor. When Jack brought the bucket of water, Keto flinched back, its huge ears flapping in distress. Max, sensing the calf's extreme fear, slowly approached the bucket, took a long, exaggerated drink, then looked back at Keto as if to say, "Trust me. It's clean, it's safe, it's okay." Keto watched every movement, and driven by a powerful survival instinct, it slowly moved forward, watching its tiny, clumsy trunk fail to draw water, forcing it to lower its head and drink directly from the mouth. Water spilling down its cheeks was a heartbreaking image of the calf's struggle. After drinking, Keto collapsed from exhaustion. Max did not hesitate. He lay down beside Keto, his warm body pressed against the calf's cold, shivering frame, acting as a living shield against the wind and chill. This simple act, an unconditional gift of warmth and solace, was the moment their friendship solidified. Later, when Jack returned with a makeshift milk formula, Max carefully sniffed the nipple, as if checking for safety, then turned to gently lick Keto's ear. The soft reassurance worked its magic. Keto, with a mixture of hesitation and absolute trust in Max, slowly got to its feet and eagerly gulped down the first warm sips of milk. Jack knelt on the warm Kruger soil, witnessing something extraordinary, a system of comfort that transcended species boundaries, driven by compassion rather than blood. Max was teaching Keto how to feel safe in a world that had just stolen everything from him. They were two wounded souls, Jack grieving his past losses, Keto grieving his family, finding a path back to hope through each other. This bond, both fragile and mighty, was forming on the quiet boundary of the Kruger, proving that true love does not need to be of the same kind to flourish. Jack knew that while the vet might be late, Keto now had an irreplaceable protector. The following days settled into a new rhythm, entirely revolving around Keto's needs. Morning walks on Jack's small property became a daily ritual. Jack led, Keto followed on increasingly steady legs, and Max raced back and forth, self-appointed scout and bodyguard. Keto grew at a staggering rate, adding several kilograms each day, demanding more milk, more grass, and more attention. But the most miraculous development was its emotional and cognitive connection to Max Keto, learned by observing Max. Initially, its trunk was clumsy, spraying water everywhere. But after only a few days, by mimicking Max's actions, it mastered the complex maneuver of sucking up water and expertly squirting it into its mouth. Their communication evolved into a private language. Max's soft whimpers of encouragement, Keto's low rumbles of acknowledgement and affection. Max's devotion was absolute. When a pack of lean wild dogs strayed too close to the boundary, Max stood his ground, barking with protective fury and authority, ensuring Keto remained safely tucked away. The moment the threat retreated, Keto rushed out, making anxious, squealing sounds, and gently stroked Max's face and the small scratches on his leg with his trunk. It wasn't just instinct. It was a reciprocity of care, an act demonstrating profound gratitude. One sweltering afternoon, Jack witnessed a beautiful moment that encapsulated their unique relationship. Max was panting in the heat under the sun. Keto, having finished its pile of hay, sucked a full trunk of water and, with surprising accuracy, sprayed it over Max's back to cool him down. Another time, it carefully swept a pile of dry leaves over the sleeping Max, tucking him in like a blanket. Jack captured the moment on camera, a silent testament to their definition of family. When Dr. Theron and animal behaviorist Lena from the sanctuary finally arrived, they brought all their skepticism and scientific equipment. But within minutes, the cameras and questions became unnecessary. They watched Max and Keto play. Max feigning attacks, Keto gently pushing with its trunk, and understood. This bond was too special to break. The experts agreed to extend the trial period. Jack would continue Keto's care under their supervision, prioritizing the strength of this extraordinary friendship. Jack and Max were given an unexpected purpose, anchoring a new life for them both on the edge of the wild. Months passed. Keto, now over a meter tall and weighing several hundred kilograms, was a picture of health. But alongside its physical growth, its wild instincts began to assert themselves. Keto spent more time standing still, its large ears pointed west, toward the deep wilderness of Kruger National Park. At night, its soft, curious rumbles began to turn into deep, resonating calls, the long-distance communication sound of elephants seeking their kin. The call of nature was growing louder. Max noticed the change, too. Now older, he was not as fast as he once was, but his protective devotion was even fiercer. The bond between them had deepened into a silent, intuitive understanding. They were preparing for a separation that had not yet been announced. Then the news came from Dr. Theron and Lena. They had found a perfect match. A herd deep inside the Kruger had an adult female elephant, Mama Vesta, who had recently lost a calf and was showing strong signs of wanting to adopt. The plan was gently laid out. Keto would be moved to a semi-wild enclosure near Mama Vesta's herd for observation and gradual integration. The 2-week countdown began, bringing a sweet and agonizing sorrow to Jack's heart. He knew this was the right choice for Keto's full future, but logic and emotion were two entirely separate things. Jack and Max cherished their final days. Max refused to sleep anywhere, but curled up tightly next to Keto in the stable, as if to memorize its every scent and warmth. The morning of the separation arrived too quickly, heavy with silence. The large transport truck from the sanctuary was waiting. Jack led Keto out, with Max faithfully walking beside them. But as they approached the ramp, Keto stopped. Its trunk recoiled, its ears drooped, a clear expression of distress. It wrapped its trunk around Max, refusing to step into the unfamiliar without its protector. Jack knelt, placing his hand on Keto's head and hugging Max tightly. He knew prolonging the moment would only make the parting harder. He had to be strong. With determined resolve, he stepped into the container first, followed by Max, to prove its safety. Slowly, hesitantly, Keto climbed aboard. But when Jack and Max stepped out and the shield slammed shut, Keto's true panic erupted. It let out a deep, mournful call of distress. the sound of separation. Max lunged at the metal door, barking and scratching desperately. The moment of letting go, the true climax of the story, had arrived. Jack had to make the ultimate sacrifice of love, giving Keto the freedom it deserved, even if it shattered his own heart. The first week without Keto was a time of deep silence and profound grief. Max barely ate, lying motionless on the pile of dry leaves where Keto used to cover him. Jack felt the emptiness in the house acutely, but he held onto the promise of a reunion. He knew he had to be strong for Max, just as Max had been strong for Keto. A week later, they drove together to the semi-wild enclosure. Lena greeted them with the wonderful news. Keto had successfully bonded with Mama Vesta, his adoptive mother. When Max saw Keto through the enclosure's chain-link fence, he barked a sharp, joyful sound. Not a warning, but the call of recognition. Keto raised its head, and in that instant, its eyes found Max. It let out a rumble, the low, loving greeting they had heard hundreds of times, and ran toward them with the full might of its massive body. Max and Keto pressed against the metal fence, trunk and nose touching through the mesh. They stood like that for minutes, a dog and an elephant, separated by a physical barrier, but unified by a heart without borders. Jack and Max spent the entire afternoon telling Keto everything, its trunk never far from them. But then, the deep, maternal rumble of Mama Vesta sounded from the bush. Keto turned, looked at its new herd, and then back at Jack and Max. It was pulled in two directions, the love of its first family and the powerful, natural call of destiny. Jack knelt down one last time. "Go, Keto," he whispered. "They are waiting for you. We will always be here. It's time for you to live your wild life." Keto touched them both with its trunk once more, a gentle, knowing touch, then slowly walked toward Mama Vesta. The large female embraced it with her trunk, welcoming it home. Jack and Max stood by the fence watching, hearts heavy but filled with a quiet joy. Keto had found the freedom it deserved. 2 years later, Jack's home has now become a small educational center, sharing the extraordinary story of Max and Keto. They still visit Keto once a month. Keto is now almost 2 meters tall, a strong, fully integrated member of the Kruger herd. Yet, when Max barks or Jack calls, it still runs to the boundary fence. They don't need much. They just sit there, Max lying in the shade, Keto standing tall, its trunk reaching across to touch them. This story is a testament that family is defined by the bonds we choose to create, not the species we belong to. Max didn't just save an elephant. He brought hope and purpose back to a man who thought he had lost everything. If you believe in the power of connection and the miracles of the wild, please share this story. Support the funds that work tirelessly to give these orphan creatures a second chance. They showed us that true love never truly lets go. It only changes form, growing stronger across every boundary. Hit subscribe to see more stories of hope from the African bush.